Ready?
Justin, middle of the field, 45, 50. Green grass in front of him, leaving Lions in his wake.
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on. Down he goes! Husker!
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
61 yards! A Sunday stroll for Justin Fields.
Oh, wow!
And
Now, Bears Etc. with the voices of the Chicago Bears, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer.
It's a 5-game winning streak at home and a excellent performance across the board. All three phases of the Bears knocked down the Atlanta Falcons and await the final showdown of the season. I'm Jeff Joniak, along with my broadcast partner on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network, the one and only Tom Thayer, the Super Bowl winning Bears guard who's already got his game face on for Packer Week. This is a Packer Week you like to say all the time. I know for the opener you said this. This is going to be an opener unlike any other. Now it's Week 18. I'm going to hear you say it's going to be a matchup like no other. Bears-Packers, another round in the great chapter of a great rivalry.
Yeah, I kind of bunched these last two games together because they were both really important to me. I wanted to see Bears finish the home season on a high note, play well, as you mentioned, in all three phases. But I need to see it carry on to Green Bay because ultimately, if they're going to reach the goal that the Chicago Bears as an organization want to reach, it's about convincing themselves and the players and showing the country that they can win division games on the road. And I think this is a really important step in the success of 2024. Not the first week of 2024, but the end of 2024. So I'm telling you, I just it's an emotional game for the Bears alumni, and it should be equally as emotional for the active players and coaches.
Let's drill down on that because I think people don't assume that. They just, they look at this as just your job. But, man, you have poured your entire adult life into the Chicago Bears as a player, as a TV personality, and a broadcaster for 27 years, going to be 28 in 2024. Will you kind of put it in a box for everybody to understand why you're so passionate about this particular matchup every time against the Green Bay Packers? I mean, Tom, it's your life. It really is. Like, this is your life. Football is your life.
I was born in 61, and I've been a Bears supporter my whole life. The first game I ever went to in Soldier Field as a fan was the Bears-Packers game. But I was raised in the Bear family by Mike Ditka, and there's nobody that was more passionate about the rivalry than Mike Ditka because he learned the rivalry from George Halas. And then, did he go to other teams and play and other teams and coach, and he had the success? Yeah. But I think when you coach for a guy like Tom Landry in Dallas, you understand rivalries. But when you play for a guy like George Halas, you understand the importance of life's commitment to your football team inside your division and how badly you need to succeed. And Mike Ditka, every single game that we played the Green Bay Packers, no matter how good we were and how bad they were, or how good they were and how bad we were, it took a certain sense of seriousness in the approach that lasted weeks before and it lasted weeks after.
Did you ever go to a Bears training camp before becoming a player as a kid?
Yeah. Listen, like I said, I met Clyde Emmerich when I was 14 years old driving to a camp. I went there as a 16-year-old. I went there as a 20-year-old. And then I went there as an active player when I drove my scooter to Platteville. So,
were you ever able to meet Mr. House?
I did not. And unfortunately for me, I would have met him if I would have come to the Chicago Bears when I was drafted by them. However, I went to the USFL instead. But
any regrets about that? Any regrets?
I don't have regrets because I always wanted to stay in Chicago and I wanted to support my family and I wanted to be supported by my family. And the only way I was guaranteed that by signing with the Chicago Blitz before the draft was signing with the Chicago Blitz, and no, I'm staying there. However, I learned more about the Chicago Bears over a 2-year period with George Allen than I did almost anybody else. His love and affection for the Chicago Bears, for George Halas, his coaching time spent with him, the development of his career and his thinking process of George Halas and the Chicago Bears, it played an incredibly important role in his football life. And there was nobody committed to football more than George Allen. And then to come aboard the Chicago Bears and play for Mike Ditka, who had the same investment in the rivalry. If you couldn't meet George Halas, playing for George Allen, playing for Mike Ditka, it was probably two of the best people outside of George Halas that you could be around and grow up around.
The fibers and the branches of that coaching tree, for sure. And George Allen was defensive coordinator, and if I'm not mistaken, he also doubled as special teams coach, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He was excellent.
It's funny because when I played for George Allen, he got a projector for me. And he says, I'm going to teach you throughout your career how to watch tape. And he says, the reason I want you to learn how to watch tape is because when you leave me and go play for the Bears, I want you to be starter ready the day you get there.
Wow.
And I think it was an influence of George on the Chicago Bears and how important it was for me to be mentally and physically prepared the day I walked into training camp.
That's a fascinating story. He cared about you that much. He got you your own individual projector.
And I'm telling you, there's other examples of George Allen. So he would set tapes on his desk, and he would say, I want you to pick these tapes up. I want you to watch them. And then I have some questions for you after you watch them. So he gave me a nickel reel of just pass rushing. And so I sat there, Jeff, and I watched that tape, and I rewatched it, and I took notes. I knew every stunt they ran. I knew every defensive lineman that I was facing. The first question he asked me when I got in was, who's the nickelback? And I had no idea. He goes, Tom, wow, that's what's important about it. If you don't know every player and everybody that comes in during this down and distance, how do you know if they're going to blitz? How do you know if they're going to bring pressure? And I'm telling you, it's questions like that he asked me that stopped me in my tracks, but also changed the way I looked at tape from that moment on.
What a great story. What a great story. That's what this podcast is all about. Bears, Etc. podcast brought to you by PNC, official bank of the Bears. I could go on and on with this, but time restraints won't allow it. We got to break down that game yesterday, first of all. What sticks out the most? And after watching it again, I'm assuming you have further thoughts. I really want to dig into the line of scrimmage on both sides, first of all.
Well, what sticks out for me is, so you don't have Cole Kmet, didn't have Darnell Mooney, you were kind of uncertain about the guys that took up their role, in which Robert Tonyan and EQ St. Brown and Tyler Scott, all those guys.
Colin Johnson,
yes, yes. But it's more of what the offensive line and Khalil Herbert has done the last 2 weeks. Because after Khalil Herbert got injured in the Commanders game, I didn't know if we were going to see that Khalil Herbert again, that before he got hurt, that was explosive, that was committed to the point of attack, that was picking up his feet in the hole, that had vision that took him to exactly where the play was going to open up. And so you put Tevin Jenkins back in the game, and the offensive line doesn't skip a beat. They go from 250 yards rushing to 192 yards rushing. But it's the compliment that Khalil Herbert has paid the offensive line. And I'm not overlooking Roschon Johnson and Justin and all their roles. However, when you get to this stage of the season, I wanted to see that Khalil Herbert again. And last week, from the very first play of the game, when he exploded up the middle of the defense against the Arizona Cardinals, could he repeat that performance? And he did. And then you go on the other side of the ball and you look at how many contributions the defensive line made to make the overall defensive performance better. And we're not reliant upon Montez Sweat getting multiple sacks every game. It's how can Montez Sweat complement DeMarcus Walker and Dexter Jr. and Zach Pickens and Billings and all the guys that got in a three-point stance on the line of scrimmage. And it filtered to the linebackers all the way back to the defensive backs.
What are you seeing in terms of protection against Sweat here in the last couple of weeks? Are there any changes on the offensive lines of what they're doing, their blocking schemes, in the run or the pass?
Yeah, they're putting running backs in a chippable position. And if Montez Sweat wins his rush immediately, then before they go out in a route, which slows down the process of that third receiver, then they're committed to make sure that they get a shoulder or a body to Montez Sweat. They line up a tight end over the offensive tackle. And before that tight end can go out and be the second or third option, he has to make sure that he gets hands to Montez Sweat. And it's not always a guarantee it's going to slow him down. Then if he has the gifted one-on-one opportunity, whether it's at home on the road, the way that he uses his power and length in a combination to win the rush before an offensive tackle can get his hands on him, he's already pushing the back of the offensive lineman into the path or the throwing lane of the quarterback. So there's so many ways that he's destructive. And then now let's slide it down. Now you're opening up one-on-ones to the opposite defensive tackle, the opposite defensive end, or the defensive tackle that's next to him. Billings is doing a really nice job of shifting the strength of the defensive line according to the formation that he's seeing. And then after the quarterback gets into his cadence, he can open up that one-on-one opportunity for Montez Sweat. So it's not a one-man job. It's a front seven's job. And a lot of time the defensive line is being led on command by Billings, and it's creating opportunities for Sweat and all the other characters.
Here on the Bears Etc. podcast, Tom and Jeff, Miller Lite, the official beer of the Chicago Bears. Tastes like Miller Time, Chicago. Time for our status at Hallis with head coach Matt Eberflus. Welcome back, Big Matt. Missed you last week. I was on Other Details with Marquee Network, so glad to have you back on the podcast. What a terrific game yesterday. It was one of my favorites. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, it's the three phases and the coaching. Everything was great. Crowd was great. It all came together.
Yeah, it was good. And, again, I want to thank the fans for the year. Certainly a great finish, 5-0 at home. To finish out the season there. And just want to thank those guys one more time, and Happy New Year to the fans as well. But, the game was really good, in terms of just offense, defense, and kicking. I think it was great complementary football with field position, with the turnovers, obviously getting the 4 turnovers, setting some short fields for us. I think we were 3 out of 4 on scoring off those sudden change. We were working hard on those. And, we just didn't get the one right before the half. The TJ interception, but every other one of those, and including the punt return. We got a good 3-and-out there late in the game and got the punt return to the 44. We also converted on that one too. So that's definitely a step in the right direction in terms of complementary football.
Another good game run of the football too. Obviously Justin and his uniqueness, but Khalil Herbert and the guys up front, the people movers, did the job.
Yeah, they really did. When you start talking about running the football, it starts up front. And it goes out to the tight ends and the receivers after that. And the guys did a really good job with that. I thought Herbert made some really nice cuts in there and did some really good job. I thought he finished, the runs with style, with our style, the Chicago style, and, knocking it forward. And I think that's a big improvement.
I love what you just said, Chicago style.
You got it.
There's a difference, isn't it? You want it to be a difference. Like that is Chicago style. This team, you want it to be as nasty as possible, playing within the rules.
Yes, no doubt.
All phases.
And again, we had a couple personal fouls yesterday, which we can't have. And again, that's not part of it. But what is part of it is us knocking things forward, knocking them back. So that's an important part to our team and to our philosophy.
Secondary buzzing again. I'll give the whole back seven. The front did its thing. Tom and I broke down the whole defense last night on our Fox TV show. He was on the defensive line. I just took the back seven. I took the whole back seven because he got eight interceptions from the linebackers this year. And you say all the time, the weak side position, that's where everything gets funneled. That position is going to make plays. Your nickel is going to be an impact player. Kyler is an impact player right now. what's happening on this defense all coming together. And this is the greatest compliment, as Tom and I just spoke on earlier in the podcast here. Teams don't want to play the Bears right now. This is a tough team to play right now. At the end of a season, if you've got hopes and dreams and whatever as a team coming in or you're going to play on their turf, that's the greatest compliment you can have right now.
Yeah, the guys are coming together, and it's really just the continuity, of the guys. And we have some talented pieces, on both sides of the ball and in the kicking game. But when those guys start to, play the game, and start to play off each other, I think that's what you're starting to see. And they understand the coverages. They understand, the nuances of the coverages and how we play those. And you can see they're in the right spot at the right times. And that's really just a compliment to their hard work, and the coaches' hard work that they've put in over these, 7-8 weeks of improvement that we've seen, going through all the way back to the Washington game.
Yeah, if you were to graph this, it's going to be pretty much an angle with very few dips, right? It's a straight angle up, right?
Yeah, I think, it's like, I think it was from week, from the Washington game, if you got all the way through, it's 18 points a game. If you do the last 5, I think it's like just at 15 points a game. So that's really ultimately what you, are deciding if you're a good defense or not.
I'm even talking about the whole team.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I thought you were talking about defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no doubt. The whole football team, in terms of the turnovers are less. Justin's done a good job protecting the ball. Our whole football team has done a good job protecting the ball. And then obviously scoring's up, for our offense, and it's been good. And the punt and pins have been better. Gil's been doing a great job with that. Our cover teams, the protection teams, for our special team units have been doing really well lately.
Time of possession, I think you're second in the league, and it's been the highest since 1977.
Yeah, it's good. Like yesterday, you see the offense do really, sustained drives. And how you do that is through getting explosive plays, and you convert on 3rd and 4th down. And we did all those things yesterday, and that's how you keep the ball.
Plus, you keep your defense fresher. You could be a little more aggressive, maybe. I don't know. Tom's always telling me 85 Bears led the league in time of possession all the time, and that defense wasn't on the field very much. But when they were, they were flying all over the place, as we know.
Yeah,
that's the bounce.
There's a part to the time of possession is really a team stat. It really is because, defensively you got to get 3 and outs. Spit the ball back to your offense. You got to get a bunch of takeaways. You stop possessions that way, spit the ball back to your offense. And then your offense has got to do a good job of having sustained drives. Explosive plays, converting on 3rd and 4th down, like I said.
Is that a goal any weeks based on opponent, time of possession? Is that a factor for you?
No, that's just our style.
Okay.
That's just our style. That's how we play it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Tom also told me a great story. And I want to bring it up because you love ball. Like few coaches I've met, it's like ingrained in you. Period. End of story. When he went to the USFL, he's coached by George Allen, and George Allen said the Bears drafted Tom, but he signed with the USFL and didn't tell the Bears. They drafted him anyway, and they basically said, "We'll see you in a couple of years. That league's not going to last." So the long story boring is that George Allen said, "Hey, I worked for George Halas. I was his defensive coordinator. I think he doubled as a special teams coordinator." And he said, "Tom, I am doing everything I can to get you ready to play for the Chicago Bears. It's your home team. You grew up here, blah, blah, blah." So he bought him a projector, his own personal projector, and gave him tapes. And he gave him a tape one time. He gave him a nickel tape. And he goes, "I want you to watch this. And I got some questions for you." So Tom tells the story, and George says, "Well, you're telling me who's the nickel?" Tom was stopped dead in his tracks. He didn't know how to watch tape the right way. George Allen taught him that.
Right.
You teach your players so much. And the end result, this is just my opinion going here, I'm just saying this, we could put about 25 guys right off the top of my head that have gotten better from week 1 because of coaching. Would you agree? I know it's a long story, but it speaks to a bigger point because you always say the partnership, the impact you make on these players, it's more than wins and losses. Yes, that determines a lot of different things from salaries to jobs, but the care that's put in by a coach that's a life lesson, lifeline to people.
Yeah, it really is, and that partnership means something to us, and it means something to the players. It's a true partnership. It's a give. You want to give of yourself, give of your time to make the other person better. And the players are doing the same thing. They're giving of themselves and giving of their time, to make themselves better. And the product that we have is the players on the field. So we want that to be the very best and the most prepared and playing it at the fastest rate, and executing at a high level. And how you do that is that true partnership. And it's got to be real, because you have to have the ability to critique and criticize, in the right way in terms of to get better. And that person, the player, has to accept that criticism, okay? And, and that critiquing, and then you take that to the drills. The drills are so important that they mimic the games, because they have to be game-like, and we put guys in situations in our drill work that are exactly like the game. And sure enough, it'll show up. Now, you have these things called everyday drills, what we do, which those are the mundane things that each position does. It's a quarterback taking a 5-step drop. It's an O tackle and a guard, B blocking a 3 technique. It's a linebacker dropping to the hook. It's a DB backpedaling and plant pointing and driving. It's a receiver running a comeback route. Those are everyday things that they do. But we do also, branch out a little bit. If there's a thing that, is an issue or a problem for a particular player, we will drill that, because then it becomes a strength and not a weakness anymore. And we do that all throughout the entire year, constantly improving, constantly getting better. And that's why you see the players get better. It's because of that partnership that he has with the coach.
So how do you feel about this team? How do you feel about this team?
Yeah, I feel really good about this team, but I also felt really good about this team 7 weeks ago. And I felt good about this team 12 weeks ago, so, and the reason why is because the character of the men in the locker room, and they've been steady the entire way. They have always been, always come to work, every single time. I don't think you could tell 7 weeks ago as opposed to right now, the work. The way they put the work in there, the way they put the work in practice, the way they do it in the meetings and the walkthroughs, their focus has been great. The energy has been great all the way through. And it goes back to, like I've always said, about the relationships we started to build, back in the springtime, because every team's different, right? The 2023 Bears, it's different than the 22, and they'll be different than the 24 Bears, so every team's different, and you have to, give attention and care to each individual player and each individual team.
Interesting about that, the 2023, now 2024, last week of the season Bears are a very different team from the week 1 Bears. I would almost say completely different.
Yeah, there's been a lot of growth. There's been a lot of growth throughout the whole, the rookies, the second-year guys, the third-year guys, the veterans that we brought along in terms of the free agents. The gelling and the consistency of the football team, is really peaking at the right time, and it's because we want to peak at this time. We want to really peak at the end of the season, play your best football in December, into January, and that can get you farther from there.
All right, we have 1 minute to go. Does it kill you in any way, shape, or form? I'm sure the guys think about it, that you guys, as it turns out, will fall within a whisker short of making the playoffs by any singular play, any moment in a season of big plays and tough losses and big wins. I mean, within a whisker. Does that eat at you?
It doesn't, because I think that everything can be learned from, right? So the playoff picture is what it is right now. So that is what it is. But what you can do is you can learn from that. So you understand how important each game is, each play. And us showing our team. And again, we were 0-4 in the beginning of the season because of a lot of reasons, right? So the continuity wasn't there. Guys were injured. We had a whole new team coming together. But at the end, now we finish this thing off the right way. Then you can say, okay, now we got to make sure the next year we start strong and finish strong, and that's what we want to do, and that's a message we want to send to our players.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hope you had a glass of champagne last night.
I did not have a glass of champagne, though. I had a couple of Moscow Mules, though.
All right, good enough. Maybe a cigar?
No, I don't smoke.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Matt. All right, we got to give some really good props to Matt Eberflus, Tom. He's kept the team together. They're a completely different team than we saw in the first 4 weeks of the season, the first 6 weeks of the season. They're a solid football team right now. a good football team. They've won 7 of 12. I mean, 7-5 record and within a whisker of going to the playoffs. They're not going, and that's sad because if I'm a player, I'm thinking back to how many missed opportunities that this franchise had to be a playoff team this year. They are good enough to be a playoff team, but they were just good enough to get beat also.
Right. And that's unfortunate because, you know, you and I pay attention, we watch, we listen to a lot of different football shows all around the country. And that's what I do during the football season. I'm not a music listener. I'm not a TV program watcher. I listen. So over the time of driving home yesterday and today, I think the biggest compliment sometimes that you can get paid by people that don't watch the Bears as much as we do is them saying at this time, this is not a team you want to play.
Yep.
This is a team that really scares you. This is a team that has this asset and that asset, and they have a quarterback like this. They have a defense that's playing like that. And it really excites me about the future because when you talk about these people that are all around the country, that's what they're looking at right now is the team you don't want to play.
Yeah.
It's the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I brought that up with Matt Eberflus in our interview, as you heard, and he wants to just focus on the now. He's not thinking about anything other than today, and that's the way he's approached the whole season. So he's not going to change just because they've experienced some success. That's the funny thing. People always ask me, oh, how's Matt now? No, Matt's the same guy. He's the same guy, win or lose. There's no difference. Now, behind the scenes and his emotions, I think he has that. Yeah, he has a lot of emotion he brings to the table. You hear snippets from people, but overall, this guy is trying to reflect somebody that's in control, and messaging has got to be on point from his view to the players and the staff. He treats the coaches like he does the players, holds everybody accountable, and he holds himself accountable. So I like his approach in good times and bad.
You know what? One thing I like about the Bears team, what I've learned to like about that approach by Matt Eberflus is, okay, let's look at this team and let's look at Darnell Wright, Braxton Jones, Nate Davis, Tevin Jenkins. Then let's look at Tyreek Stevenson, Terrell Smith, Dexter, Zach Pickens. We have guys, Jeff, that have just begun to scratch the surface of what they can ultimately be. So for Matt ever to have a conclusive thought about what this team can be and where it's going in the future, I think you're selling tomorrow's progress short. And you have to continuously have Chris Morgan work with his offensive linemen, have the running backs coach work with Roshan Johnson and the rest of that crew, have John Hoke, the defensive backfield coaches, work with these young defensive backs. So, yeah, I think it's kind of good for Matt Eberflus to have his sights on tomorrow, not 2 months from now.
Well, it's interesting. All those guys you mentioned, I think we'd agree they all got better. Every one of them.
Of course, but they got so much better to get.
Yeah,
and that's the most encouraging thing about it. I think when you talk about developing an offense around a guy like Darnell Wright, beforehand, you really don't know how much you can feed him or what he's capable of doing. Now you got somewhat of an indication of, with the weight room, with the offseason, with the dietitian, what he can do mentally and physically, where you could possibly go with this offense. Because, listen, there are areas that you need to have a better short yardage and goal line offense. And he's the type of guy that can help you build that. So I do think when you look at some of these guys and what their future can be, man, it's got to be exciting for them as well as the coaches.
Bears fans, you can be there for live NFL action all season long as the official ticket marketplace of the Bears in the NFL. Ticketmaster has a wide selection of tickets available for every game. Find tickets today at Ticketmaster.com/Bears. Remaining moments, I got a couple of questions. One, he had a great game in Washington, and I feel Justin had a great game against Atlanta. Which one was better, in your opinion?
Wow. I don't want to answer a question with a question.
That's fine.
But to me, I've always been searching about what is the identity of the Bears offense. to me, the identity of the Bears offense against the Commanders was throwing the ball. Great protection, great timing, great accuracy by Justin, an explosive record-setting game by DJ Moore. Over the last 2 weeks, what's the identity of the Bears? 250 yards rushing, 192 yards rushing in the last 2 games. Your identity there is running the ball to open up all those other aspects.
Well, can't you have, like you pull out a drawer and you got a bunch of utensils? I'm going to need the knife today. I'm going to need the spoon next week. I'm going to need the bigger knife the week after. I mean, do you care?
Well, to me, I think a bigger influence on an offensive football program is being able to run the ball that well week in and week out, because then that opens your downfield passing game. You're more in control of the defensive personnel. Play action pass is more effective. You create running lanes for the running back and the quarterback. So to me, I think when you have a running game that is the defensive coordinator's first concern for 17 weeks, there's so much more you have available to you in offense.
And I'm thinking a defensive coordinator's first concern is Justin Fields' legs and his, as we said yesterday, the Houdini acts that he's pulling. I mean, that's rare. I mean, you're not always going to be able to do that. And they were popping him. I mean, Caden Ellis was Caden Ellis, that blitz, that was an ugly blitz, untouched down the middle of the pike. But I'm somewhat being hypocritical here because me too, I'm all about the run. If we rush for 360, I'd be completely happy with that. But the downfield component with a guy like DJ, you got to make the most of it. You really do. And it's set up by the play action. Yeah. And work the middle of the field. I love, and you've heard me say this too, I'm a middle of the field guy. I love Cole Kmet over the middle of the field more than trying to fit something in those windows against a cover 2 and those 18-yard zones outside where it's open. But you got to feather it in there and layer it in there, and that you're on a postage stamp. And the great quarterbacks do that. But I love the slant and goes. I mean, I have visions of a Jerry Rice on a slant and go, and he runs down the middle of the field. You can't catch him, even though he didn't run very fast. I mean, you know what I mean? That to me kills a defense is when you sucker them down the middle.
Just try to analogize what a team has to be in order to win the Super Bowl. When you look at the 85 Bears, we led the league in scoring. We led the league in time of possession. We led the league in rushing. We had Walter Payton in the backfield. We had Willie Gault, Dennis McKinnon, Emery Moorhead as receivers. We had Jim McMahon, who understand the passing game as well as anybody in the league at that time. You think of the compliment it paid to the defense when they didn't have to spend a lot of time on the field,
right,
and it increased the aggressiveness that the defensive core, Buddy Ryan, could use with the personnel he had. Now, if you take this Bears team and you have that rushing component and you have DJ and the rest of the receivers, including Cole Kmet, and then what you can do with the defense and how much more vicious you could be, and your attack philosophy. Listen, the ultimate goal is to win the Super Bowl. And if you want to complement this team and you can run the ball in a time consumption scoring type of a way, set your sights on the division and set your sights on a Super Bowl.
Good news, Chicago United Airlines getting brand new planes with all the bells and whistles like Bluetooth connectivity, screens at every seat, and room for everyone's roller bag. United, proud to fly the Chicago Bears, and you too. And take a chance. Download the BetRivers app today. All right, here's our Packer preview. You got a couple of minutes to break it down. Let's start with your number one focus. I'm sure it's going to be Kenny Clark. And how do you mute a red-hot Jordan Love? Because he's playing well.
Jordan Love, the guy has really done a nice job this year. From the Bears playing him the first game of the year, I think he's a much better player right now than he was at the first game of the year. He's got a group of receivers that's not the Watson that they drafted. He's been injured throughout the season, but he has rookie receivers on record-setting paces. And so the way he's been able to complement a shifting offensive line and a shifting receiver group and injuries to Aaron Jones, he's done a great job. It's not hard for me to compliment them because I like to see players in the NFL, no matter who they play for, develop up to their expectations. And then when you talk about the other side of the ball and Kenny Clark, the dude's a record. He is a great defensive tackle. And you think of defensive game plans. Okay, I gotta block this middle linebacker. I gotta make sure this defensive back has responsibilities. I can't get beat by this safety. This guy lines up right above the football. He's the closest path to the quarterback and the running game than anybody else in that football field. If you don't feel that you can devise a scheme how to attack him from every angle unsuspectedly, it will be difficult to have that type of running game that we've just been bragging about. So you better think of a plan of attack against Kenny Clark.
Game day snacking calls for good foods. Chunky guacamole made with Hass avocados, tomatoes, onions, cilantro, and a squeeze of lime juice. It's the perfect snack to watch while the Bears win. Score some today at your local grocery store. Game day is guac day. Game day will be Sunday, 3:25 at Lambeau Field. We do love the division battles, and we're going to love this one, especially if the outcome favors the navy blue and orange. Tom, thank you very much.
I wish it was noon.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
I don't want to wait till 3:25. I wish it was a noon NFC Central, Lambeau Field, Chicago Bear game to set that last football Sunday, off to a rocket start. But we'll be there early, and we'll be there on time.
Bring the coffee, Tom. For Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Our next Bears, Etc. podcast coming to you on Thursday. We'll take a deep dive on the Green Bay Packers. The Bears can knock them out of the playoff mix, but more importantly, the Bears can finish the season strong and with a message. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please subscribe now on the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.